The words came out of her mouth like poison. "Get your monkey hands off my car." Elena Thornton didn't even look at him when she said it. She was too busy screaming into her phone, watching her entire empire collapse in real time. But Marcus Reid heard every single word, and those words hung in the air of that Mercedes like smoke you couldn't wave away. Let me back up for a second because you need to understand how we got here. It was a Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago. Rain was coming down in sheets. The kind of rain that makes you question every life choice that brought you outside. And Marcus was sitting in the driver's seat of Elena's black Mercedes S-Class, trying to help. That's all he was trying to do. The radio was blasting some news channel. Elena was in the back seat, completely losing it on a conference call. Something about interpreters, something about a deal falling apart. Marcus could hear the desperation in her voice, so he did what any decent human being would do. He reached over to turn down the volume. That's when her head snapped around. "Keep your monkey hands off my car." 5 words. That's all it took. Marcus's hand froze in midair. For just a second, the entire world went silent. Not the radio, not the rain hammering against the windows, not Elena's panicked breathing. All of that faded into this awful, heavy silence. And in that silence, Marcus felt something inside him crack. You know that feeling when someone says something so casually cruel that it takes your brain a few seconds to even process it? Like, did they really just say that? Did those words really just come out of their mouth? Yeah, that. Elena kept talking like nothing happened. "You think because you drive my Mercedes, you get to touch my things." Her voice was ice cold now, sharp. "You're the help, Marcus. Stay in your lane." The help. 3 years he'd been driving this woman around. 3 years of "Good morning, Ms. Thornton," and "Right away, Ms. Thornton," and "Whatever you need, Ms. Thornton." 3 years of being invisible. "Matter of fact," Elena continued, her voice dripping with contempt, "put the partition up. I'm tired of seeing your face in my mirror." The glass barrier slid up between them with this soft mechanical hiss, like the sound of a door closing, or maybe the sound of something ending. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. His knuckles went white, his jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt, but his eyes stayed locked on the road ahead. Traffic. Rain. Brake lights bleeding red through the wet windshield. He didn't say a word. Behind that partition, Elena was spiraling. Marcus could see her in the rearview camera, pacing back and forth in the limited space of the back seat. Her perfectly styled blonde hair was coming undone. Black mascara was starting to smudge under her eyes. Her hands were shaking. "What do you mean all 3 interpreter services are booked?" she screamed into her phone. "Richard, this is a $1.2 billion deal." Marcus watched her unravel, watched her make call after call, watched her beg, plead, threaten, and finally just break down. "I don't care if it costs $50,000, she was shouting now. "Find me someone who speaks Japanese and Mandarin. The Tanaka-Chen delegation lands in 90 minutes. Another call, another rejection. "No. We cannot postpone." Elena hissed into her phone, her voice cracking. "They'll walk away permanently. 3 years of negotiations down the drain." Marcus had been driving Elena long enough to know the truth. He'd heard enough phone calls, enough late-night panic sessions, enough conversations she thought he wasn't listening to. Thornton Industries was 3 months from bankruptcy. This merger wasn't just business, it was survival. 200 jobs hung in the balance. Families, mortgages, kids' college funds, all of it hanging by a thread, including his own job. Elena's next call went straight to voicemail, then another. Her hands were trembling as she dialed. The perfectly composed CEO was completely falling apart, and that's when Marcus made his choice. He lowered the partition. "Excuse me, Ms. Thornton." Elena's head whipped around. The fury in her eyes could have melted steel. "I told you to—" "What languages do you need?" The question hung there, just floating in the space between them. Elena's mouth opened, then closed. Her phone call was completely forgotten. She just stared at him through the rearview mirror like he'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. "I'm sorry. What?" Marcus kept his voice calm, professional, the way he'd been trained 2 decades ago in a completely different life. "For your merger meeting. What languages do you need?" Elena stared at him like he'd grown a second head. That's not your concern." "Japanese and Mandarin," Marcus continued quietly, his eyes still on the road. "Hindi, Korean, Portuguese." Something in his tone made Elena's breath catch. This wasn't the voice of her driver anymore. This was something else entirely. Something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "You speak Japanese?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Fluently," Marcus replied, "along with Mandarin, Hindi, Korean, Arabic, Portuguese, French, German, and Spanish." The car fell dead silent. Elena's phone slipped from her hand. It bounced off the leather seat and landed on the floor with a dull thud. She didn't even notice. "You're telling me," she said slowly, carefully, like she was trying to make sure she heard right, "that you speak 9 languages?" Marcus nodded once. "Would you like me to demonstrate?" Before Elena could answer, her phone started ringing again. The screen lit up from where it had fallen, and the caller ID made her stomach drop. Tanaka-Chen Holdings. She stared at the phone like it might explode. "I can't. Without an interpreter? May I?" Marcus's hand extended back through the partition opening. Elena's pride went to war with her desperation. The phone kept ringing. Each ring felt like a countdown to disaster. Finally, she handed it over. Marcus answered in flawless Japanese. "Moshi moshi, Tanaka-san." The transformation was instant. Gone was the careful, deferential driver's voice. In its place was this confident, cultured authority, the kind of voice that commanded respect without demanding it. The person on the other end responded in rapid-fire Japanese. Marcus listened intently, nodding occasionally, his face completely calm. "Hi, Thornton-san ima yunbishite orimasu," he said smoothly. Elena watched his face in that little rear-view camera. His entire posture had changed. Shoulders back, jaw set with this quiet confidence. This wasn't her driver anymore. This was someone else entirely. Then Marcus switched to Mandarin, seamlessly, like flipping a switch. Another voice had joined the call and he transitioned without even a pause. Technical terms started flowing from his lips like water. Patent licensing, intellectual property transfers, market penetration strategies. He was discussing her company's most sensitive information in languages she couldn't understand. Elena felt her heart hammering. Who was this man? After a moment, Marcus covered the phone and turned slightly. "Miss Thornton, there's been a cultural misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding?" Elena's voice came out higher than she intended. "The kind that kills deals," Marcus replied evenly. "They're insulted by your previous communications. Your legal team used overly aggressive language in the preliminary contracts. They think you view them as subordinates, not partners." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "What do I do?" Marcus returned to Japanese. His tone became apologetic, respectful. He used phrases that seemed to have an immediate effect. Elena could hear the tension on the other end of the line just dissolve. "What did you tell them?" Elena demanded the second there was a pause. "That Thornton Industries deeply respects their family business legacy," Marcus said calmly. "That you've been personally studying Japanese business customs to show proper honor." Elena's mouth fell open. "But I haven't." "You have now," Marcus said simply. Then he went right back to the call. 20 minutes later, he handed the phone back. "They're looking forward to meeting with you in person. Marcus said, his voice back to that calm, professional tone. The merger discussion is back on track. Elena stared at the phone in her hand, then at Marcus's reflection in that rearview mirror, really looked at him for the first time in 3 years. "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus pulled the Mercedes into Thornton Industries' underground parking garage. The familiar concrete walls had never felt so different. The echo of the engine cut off, and suddenly everything was too quiet. "Someone who needed work 3 years ago," he said quietly, "and someone who still believes in second chances." He parked in Elena's reserved spot, the one with her name in gold letters on the wall, and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, Elena could hear her own heartbeat pounding. Marcus. She used his name. For the first time in 3 years, she actually used his name. "I need to know everything." He met her eyes in the mirror. For a moment, that partition between them felt like more than just glass. It felt like a chasm. "PhD in International Relations from Georgetown," Marcus began, his voice steady and factual. "Master's in Applied Linguistics from Harvard. 22 years as a senior diplomatic translator for the State Department." Each credential hit Elena like a physical blow. "I specialized in high-stakes multinational negotiations," Marcus continued. "G7 summits, trade agreements, crisis mediation." He paused. "Budget cuts eliminated my position 3 years ago. I needed work immediately." "Your mother's medical bills," Elena said suddenly, remembering fragments of phone calls she'd overheard. Conversations she'd never really listened to. "Cancer treatment," Marcus confirmed with a nod. "My daughter's medical school tuition." Elena felt something cold and heavy settle in her stomach. "So you became a driver." "I became whatever I needed to be to survive." The parking garage's fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Elena looked down at her hands. They were still trembling from that phone call. "Marcus, she started, then stopped. What could she possibly say? "Sorry I called you a monkey. Sorry I treated you like furniture for 3 years?" "Ms. Thornton," Marcus interrupted gently, "your meeting is in 40 minutes. We should go upstairs." But neither of them moved. In the enclosed space of that Mercedes, 3 years of invisible service suddenly felt enormous. Like this crushing weight that had been building and finally broke through. "I've been listening to your business calls for 36 months, Marcus said softly. "I know every deal, every crisis, every late-night panic about the company's future." Elena's face flushed with shame, hot and prickly and awful. "Why didn't you ever say something?" she asked. "Offer to help?" Marcus's laugh was gentle, not bitter, just sad. "Would you have listened?" The answer hung between them, unspoken but crystal clear. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant lit up the screen. "Tanaka team early. Lobby now." "They're here," Elena whispered. Marcus was already getting out of the car, moving around to open her door with the same professional courtesy he'd shown for 3 years. But everything had changed. As Elena stepped out, she looked at Marcus, really truly looked at him for the first time, not at her driver, not at the help, but at him. "Will you help me save my company?" Her voice cracked on the last word. Marcus straightened his driver's uniform, fixed his tie, and nodded once. "Let's go save your company, Ms. Thornton." What do you think Marcus should do next? Should he help the woman who treated him like garbage? Drop your thoughts below. And if you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button because what happened next is going to blow your mind when you see what happens when the executives find out who Marcus really is. The elevator climbed toward the executive floors in complete silence. Elena stared at the numbers ticking upward. 15, 16, 17. Each floor felt like a countdown to either salvation or total disaster. Her mind was reeling. 22 years of diplomatic service, Georgetown PhD, Harvard master's degree. She'd been paying a former State Department translator minimum wage to drive her to Starbucks. "Marcus," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the elevator's hum. "Tell me about before." The elevator climbed between floors. Marcus kept his eyes on the digital display, his face unreadable. "Embassy in Tokyo," he began, his voice matter-of-fact. "Professional. 1998 to 2003. Trade negotiations that prevented a currency war." Elena's breath caught. She remembered reading about those negotiations in business school. They'd been legendary. "Beijing assignment next," Marcus continued. "Helped draft the intellectual property frameworks that your company still uses today." The words hit Elena like a punch to the gut. Those frameworks had saved Thornton Industries millions in licensing fees. She'd studied them, relied on them, built entire divisions around them. After that, Geneva, UN climate accords, then back to D.C. for cabinet-level briefings. Marcus paused, and something flickered across his face. "I translated for 3 presidents, Ms. Thornton. 2 Democrats, 1 Republican." The elevator stopped at the 15th floor. The doors opened. Neither of them moved to get out. The doors closed again. "What happened?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Budget Reconciliation Act, 2022, Marcus said, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Foreign service downsizing, 20% staff reduction, last hired, first fired. But your experience meant nothing against spreadsheet mathematics," Marcus finished quietly. "I had 2 weeks to find income. Mom's oncology bills were due. Sarah's med school deposit couldn't wait." His voice never wavered, but Elena caught the steel underneath. "Pride doesn't pay for chemotherapy." The elevator doors opened again, then closed. They were still sitting there. "I applied everywhere," Marcus continued. "Consulting firms said I was overqualified. Corporations said I was too specialized. Universities said I was too expensive." He finally looked at her, really looked at her. "Your company needed a driver. I needed a paycheck." "For 3 years," Elena whispered. "For 3 years," Marcus confirmed. Outside this elevator, Elena's world was collapsing, but inside, she was learning about a man who'd held his world together with quiet dignity while she tore him apart piece by piece. "Marcus, why didn't you ever fight back?" Elena asked. "Demand recognition?" He smiled, but it was the saddest smile she'd ever seen. "Ms. Thornton, I've negotiated with dictators and diplomats," he said slowly, "but I've never met anyone more dangerous than a person who's already decided what you're worth." The words hit like a slap. "Every morning I chose to see this as temporary," Marcus continued. "Every insult, every dismissal, every time you threw your briefcase at me like I was furniture." He paused. "I chose to believe that someday someone would need what I actually know." Elena's throat tightened. She remembered throwing her briefcase. God, she remembered. She'd done it at least a dozen times, just tossed it at him without even looking, like he was a coat rack. "And today," Elena started. "Today you need what I know," Marcus finished. The elevator shuddered slightly as it waited. The silence stretched out between them like a living thing. "Marcus, I owe you. You owe me nothing except the chance to do what I'm trained for." His voice was firm now. "Save your company. Save those jobs. That's what matters." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The elevator doors opened to the executive floor. Marcus gestured for her to exit first, falling into step behind her exactly as he had 1,000 times before. But everything was different now. The executive floor was in complete chaos. Elena's assistant, Rebecca, came rushing toward them, her face pale and panicked. Her normally perfect bun was coming loose. Mascara smudged under one eye. "Elena, thank God," Rebecca gasped. "The Tanaka advance team is in conference room A. They're asking about cultural protocols and nobody knows what to tell them. Chen's people are asking about contract language and it's handled," Elena said firmly. her voice cutting through Rebecca's panic like a knife. Rebecca stopped mid-sentence. What? Rebecca, meet Marcus Reid, Elena said, gesturing to him. Our new interpreter consultant. Rebecca's eyes flicked to Marcus's driver uniform, then back to Elena. Her expression went from confused to absolutely bewildered. I'm sorry, what? Mr. Reid will be handling all international communications for the merger, Elena continued, her voice carrying this new authority she'd never heard from herself before. Rebecca lowered her voice to a harsh whisper. Elena, he's your driver. He's a Georgetown PhD who speaks 9 languages, Elena shot back. Any other concerns? The color drained from Rebecca's face. There is one small problem, Marcus interjected diplomatically, his voice calm and professional. I should probably change before meeting the delegation. Elena looked at his uniform, the black driver's suit with the company logo, for the first time with clear eyes. He was right. Rebecca, take Mr. Reid to the executive shop downstairs, Elena ordered. Get him a proper suit, navy blue, conservative tie. She checked her watch. 20 minutes. But the advance team, Rebecca started, will wait. Elena's voice carried a new authority she'd never quite accessed before. Tell them we're reviewing final cultural considerations out of respect for their customs. Rebecca hesitated. You could see her struggling with the situation. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Now. Rebecca. As they headed toward the elevator, Elena caught Marcus's arm. Are you ready for this? She asked quietly. Marcus straightened his shoulders. The transformation was already starting. Ms. Thornton, I've mediated disputes between nations. I think I can handle a business meeting. 15 minutes later, Marcus returned. And Elena actually felt her breath catch. The navy suit fit him perfectly. It highlighted his natural dignity, something that had been there all along, but she'd been too blind to see. The conservative tie, the polished shoes. Gone was any trace of the invisible driver. Standing before her was someone who commanded respect just by existing. Better? He asked. Elena nodded, completely speechless. The man before her looked like he belonged in the boardroom. Hell, he looked like he owned the building. Conference room A, she managed. Let's see what you can do. Conference room A had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Chicago. On a clear day, you could see Lake Michigan. Today, rain streaked down the glass like tears. The advance team consisted of 3 Japanese executives and 1 translator. They all stood when Elena and Marcus entered, bowing formally. Marcus returned the bow with precise depth and duration. Not too shallow, not too deep. Exactly right. Then he spoke in flawless Japanese. Elena didn't understand a word, but she watched the lead executive's eyes widen with surprise and genuine pleasure. He responded enthusiastically, gesturing for everyone to sit. What did you tell them? Elena whispered as they took their seats. That Thornton Industries is honored by their presence, Marcus replied quietly, and grateful for their patience with our cultural preparations. The meeting proceeded in 3 languages. Marcus seamlessly translated technical specifications between Japanese and English. When the Chinese patents came up, he clarified legal terminology in Mandarin without missing a beat. But more than translation, he was conducting diplomacy. When the lead executive, Mr. Tanaka, mentioned concerns about intellectual property protection, Marcus didn't just translate word for word, he addressed the cultural context. Tanaka-san expresses concern about long-term partnership stability, Marcus explained to Elena. In Japanese business culture, this isn't just about contracts, it's about family honor extending across generations. Then Marcus turned back to the executives. He spoke in formal Japanese about Thornton Industries' commitment to lasting relationships, not just transactions, about building something that would honor both families' legacies. The transformation in the room was immediate. Formal politeness gave way to genuine warmth. Smiles appeared, shoulders relaxed. The tension that had been thick enough to cut just dissolved. "How did you know to say that?" Elena asked during a brief break when the executive stepped out for tea. "Because I spent 5 years in Tokyo learning what matters beyond the words," Marcus replied simply. "Business in Asia is always personal first." The advance team leader, an older man named Kenji Tanaka, approached Marcus directly when they returned. He spoke in rapid Japanese, his tone serious but not unfriendly. Marcus listened intently, nodding occasionally, asking questions. "He wants to know if you understand the gift exchange protocols for tomorrow's main meeting," Marcus translated. "He's concerned your team might inadvertently offend Tanaka-san." Elena felt her stomach drop. "What protocols?" Marcus and Kenji spoke quietly in Japanese for several minutes. Marcus took careful notes, asking detailed questions, his face thoughtful and focused. "We need specific gifts," Marcus finally explained to Elena. "Not expensive, but meaningful. Items that show you've studied their company history and family values." "Can you handle that?" Elena asked, feeling completely out of her depth. "I can handle that." As the advance team prepared to leave, Kenji approached Marcus and shook his hand with both of his, speaking earnestly in Japanese. Marcus bowed deeply in response. "What did he say?" Elena asked after they'd gone. Marcus smiled slightly. "He said, 'Finally, Thornton Industries sends someone who understands respect.'" Elena felt a mixture of pride and shame wash over her in equal measure. "Marcus, about this morning in the car," she started. "Miss Thornton," Marcus interrupted gently but firmly, "we have 16 hours to prepare for the most important meeting in your company's history. Personal apologies can wait." He was right, but Elena couldn't shake the image of how she'd treated him, the words she'd used, monkey hands, the help, God. "What do we need to do?" she asked, pushing the shame down for later. Marcus pulled out his notes. "Learn their names, their titles, their family businesses. Understand why this merger matters to them personally, not just financially." He looked up. "And the gifts." "I have ideas, but first, we need to call your legal team about those contract revisions." Elena looked at Marcus with completely new eyes. This wasn't her driver anymore. This wasn't even just a consultant. This was her lifeline. "Lead the way, Mr. Reid." Elena called an emergency board meeting, the conference room filled with Thornton Industries' senior leadership. Their faces were grim. Everyone knew what was at stake. "I want you to meet Marcus Reid," Elena announced, "our lead interpreter for tomorrow's merger." Executive Vice President David Harrison spoke first. He was old money, Yale educated, the kind of man who thought his opinion mattered more than everyone else's. "Elena, where's the professional service we hired?" His tone was dismissive, already irritated. "Unavailable," Elena replied calmly. "Mr. R. Reid will handle all translations." "And his credentials?" This from Chief Financial Officer Patricia Morgan. "Georgetown Ph.D., Harvard Masters, 22 years State Department." Silence, complete and total silence. Then Harrison pressed harder, leaning forward. "Where did you find him?" Elena felt the trap closing around her. "He's been with the company 3 years." "In what capacity?" The words stuck in her throat. "Operations." "Operations." Harrison's voice dripped with skepticism. "Elena, this is a billion-dollar merger. We need verified professionals, not someone from the mailroom." Marcus sat quietly at the end of the table. His face was completely impassive. He didn't flinch, didn't react, just sat there with perfect posture and perfect calm. "He handled today's advance meeting flawlessly," Elena said, her voice harder now. "That's not the point," Harrison used his patient, explaining to children tone. "This is about appearances, credibility." Marketing Director Susan Walsh nodded. The Japanese expect a certain level of professionalism. We can't show up with someone who looks like… She stopped herself. Like what, Susan? Elena's voice dropped the temperature in the room by 20 degrees. Someone who looks the part, Harrison said bluntly. Someone they'll take seriously. Are you questioning his qualifications? Elena asked quietly, dangerously. I'm questioning his suitability, Harrison replied. We can't risk everything on someone we don't know. That's when Marcus finally spoke. His voice was calm, professional, but there was steel underneath it. Mr. Harrison, what specific concerns do you have about Japanese business protocols? Harrison straightened uncomfortably in his chair. Cultural nuances, business etiquette, gift exchanges, proper bowing, seating arrangements. Ah, Marcus nodded slowly. Ojigi and omiyage protocols, correct RAI angles for executives, Zaseki positioning based on founding dates rather than revenue. Dead. Silence. The Tanaka family business was established in 1952, Marcus continued, his voice even and factual. Post-war reconstruction values. They'll expect gifts acknowledging their family's contribution to Japan's recovery, not expensive items suggesting we're buying influence. Harrison's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The Chen Holdings follows British Indian traditions, Marcus went on. Direct communication, minimal ceremony, absolute punctuality. Ms. Chen will interpret elaborate gift ceremonies as time-wasting. He looked around the table calmly, meeting each person's eyes. The key is balancing both without causing offense. Tanaka-san gets the position of honor. Chen gets clear sightlines to documentation. The silence stretched out. You could hear the HVAC system humming, someone's watch ticking. How do you know this? Harrison whispered. I negotiated the 2019 Tokyo Trade Framework establishing current U.S.-Japanese protocols, Marcus replied simply, and mediated the Chen-Euro Bank dispute in 2020. 7 executives suddenly realized they'd been questioning someone more qualified than all of them combined. Any other concerns about Mr. Reid's suitability? Elena asked quietly, her voice carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. No one spoke. Good. Elena turned to Marcus. What do we need? As Marcus outlined the strategy, Elena watched the shift happen, Harrison taking notes, Morgan nodding along, Walsh asking intelligent questions. But she also noticed what didn't change, the careful distance. Questions directed to her, not Marcus. Recognition wasn't the same as acceptance. After the meeting, Harrison approached privately. Where exactly has he been working for 3 years? His voice was low, suspicious. Elena met his eyes steadily. Learning everything about our company while we learned nothing about him. That evening, Marcus worked alone in the empty office. Elena found him at 9 p.m., surrounded by documents, cultural research, and gift samples spread across an entire conference table. You should go home, she said from the doorway. Get some rest. Marcus looked up from his notes. Almost finished, just reviewing the technical patents one more time. Elena noticed the precision of his preparation, color-coded files for each executive, cultural protocol checklists, even backup conversation topics in case things went sideways. Marcus, this is beyond thorough, she said, stepping into the room. Ms. Thornton, in diplomacy we say, preparation prevents humiliation. He gestured to the research spread before him. Did you know Mr. Tanaka's father was a Hiroshima survivor who rebuilt their family business from nothing? Elena shook her head slowly. That's why he values long-term partnerships over quick profits, Marcus explained. His decision-making process honors his father's memory. He pulled out another file. Ms. Chen lost her first company to a bad translation in a Mumbai court. She's hypersensitive to linguistic precision. How did you learn all this? Elena asked, genuinely amazed. 6 hours of research your regular interpreters wouldn't have done. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Problem? Elena asked. Emergency call from our Mumbai branch office. IP theft concern. The regional director only speaks Hindi. Elena's heart sank. We can't afford any complications tonight. But Marcus was already answering, switching to fluent Hindi without missing a beat. Namaste, Kumarji, main Marcus bol raha hoon. For 20 minutes, Marcus mediated a three-way crisis. Elena watched him switch between Hindi, English, and rapid-fire legal terminology like he was changing radio stations. His voice carrying the quiet authority of someone used to solving international emergencies at 3 a.m. What was that about? Elena asked when he finally hung up. A competitor tried to steal your Mumbai AI algorithms, Marcus said simply. Kumar caught them, but needed immediate legal guidance in Hindi. It's handled. Elena just stared. You just solved that? Ms. Thornton, your company has been hemorrhaging value through communication gaps for years. Marcus pulled out a thick folder. I've been documenting every international issue I've overheard in the car. He opened the folder. Dozens of incidents, missed opportunities, cultural misunderstandings, all meticulously documented. The sole software licensing deal that fell through? Marcus pointed to one page. Your translator used informal Korean with the CEO's father. Unforgivable insult. Elena felt sick. The Berlin partnership that stalled? Another page. Your legal team sent contracts in American English. Germans interpret that as intellectual arrogance. Why didn't you ever say something? Elena's voice came out as barely a whisper. Marcus's smile was gentle, not bitter, just sad. Would you have listened? The truth is out, but the real test is coming tomorrow. Will Marcus be able to save Elena's company? And what happens when she realizes just how much she's lost by being blind? Drop a comment if you think Elena deserves this second chance or if Marcus should have let her empire burn. Elena couldn't sleep. At midnight, she sat in her home office with a glass of wine she hadn't touched, staring at her laptop screen. She'd been researching Marcus Reid for the past 3 hours, and what she found made her hands shake. State Department commendations, diplomatic achievement awards, news articles praising his negotiation breakthroughs, a photo of him standing behind 3 presidents during an international summit, looking calm and professional while the fate of nations hung in the balance. Her driver had shaped global trade policy. There was an article from 2018 about trade negotiations with China. Marcus's name was mentioned 6 times. The journalist called him the quiet genius who prevented an economic catastrophe. Another article from 2020 showed him receiving an award from the Japanese Prime Minister. The caption read, Marcus Reid, whose cultural sensitivity and linguistic expertise saved the Okinawa base agreements. Elena clicked through page after page. Each one made her feel smaller. This man had negotiated with world leaders, had prevented wars, had built frameworks that literally shaped how international business worked, and she'd made him drive her to yoga class. At 2 a.m., Elena finally closed her laptop, but she didn't sleep. She just sat there in the dark, replaying every interaction she'd had with Marcus over 3 years. Every dismissive comment, every time she'd ignored him, every moment she'd treated him like he was invisible. The words from this morning echoed in her head. Keep your monkey hands off my car. God, what had she done? The next morning, Elna called an emergency board session before the merger meeting. 6 a.m. The executives filed in, looking exhausted and tense. Marcus wasn't with her. Before we begin today, Elena said, standing at the head of the conference table, I need to address yesterday's concerns about Marcus Reid. She pulled up her laptop and connected it to the conference room monitor. David, you questioned his credentials. A State Department citation appeared on screen. Presidential commendation for preventing the 2018 U.S.-China trade war collapse. Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Patricia, you worried about his experience? Another document filled the screen. Lead negotiator for the Asian Pacific Economic Framework, the foundation of our entire international business model. Morgan went pale. Susan, you questioned whether the Japanese would take him seriously. Elena clicked again. A personal letter of recommendation appeared, from the former Japanese Prime Minister, praising Marcus for mediating the 2020 Okinawa base agreements. Walsh stared at the screen like it might bite her. For 3 years, Elena said, her voice carrying quiet fury. We've employed one of America's most accomplished diplomats. She let that sink in. Watched each executive process it. And we used him to drive me to coffee meetings. The room was deadly silent. Marcus Reid doesn't work in our operations department, Elena continued. He is our operations department, starting today. She clicked to a new document, an official contract. I'm promoting him to Senior Vice President of International Relations. Salary, $200,000 plus equity. Reporting directly to me. Elena, Harrison started. I'm not finished. Elena's voice cut through his objection like a blade. Marcus will also head our new Cultural Intelligence Division. Budget, $3 million annually. Staff, his choice. She closed the laptop with a decisive snap. Any questions about Mr. Reid's qualifications? No one spoke. No one even moved. Good, because he's about to save this company. 20 minutes later, Marcus entered the boardroom. He was wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, dark blue tie, shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked like he'd stepped out of a diplomatic summit. Elena noticed the immediate shift in the room. The executives sat up straighter, gave him their full attention. Respect replaced yesterday's skepticism. Ladies and gentlemen, Elena announced formally, I present Marcus Reid, Senior Vice President of International Relations. She handed him a business card holder, his new cards, printed overnight at ridiculous expense. Marcus accepted it with quiet dignity. Thank you for this opportunity. The opportunity is ours, Elena replied, meaning every single word. Chief Technology Officer Daniel Kim cleared his throat. Mr. Reid, I owe you an apology, a real one. No apology necessary, Marcus said gracefully, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. One by one, the executives who'd questioned him yesterday offered their respect. Some shook his hand, others just nodded. But the message was clear. They'd been wrong, completely, totally wrong. Now, Elena said, straightening her shoulders, let's go save our company. As they filed out, Harrison approached Marcus privately. His usual arrogance was completely gone. Marcus, I was wrong yesterday, completely out of line. Marcus shook his hand firmly. David, we all make assumptions. What matters is what we do after we realize them. Elena watched the exchange and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Pride in her leadership. Ready, Mr. Vice President? She asked Marcus. Marcus straightened his tie and smiled, a real smile. Ready, Ms. Thornton? For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Reid walked into a business meeting as himself. The elevator to the executive conference room felt different this time. Elena and Marcus stood side by side. Equals now. But the weight of the coming meeting pressed down on both of them like a physical force. Marcus, Elena said quietly, watching the floor numbers tick upward. I need you to know something. He looked at her reflection in the polished steel doors. If this deal fails, Thornton Industries has maybe 3 months before bankruptcy. Her voice was barely above a whisper. 200 people lose their jobs, including yours. Marcus nodded slowly. How long have you been carrying this alone? 2 years, maybe longer. Elena's hands trembled slightly. I tell the board we're restructuring. I tell investors we're pivoting. But the truth is we're dying. The elevator climbed through floors of bustling offices, people who had no idea their livelihoods hung on the next 2 hours. Marcus, I have to ask you something personal, Elena said. Go ahead. Why are you helping me? After everything. After how I treated you this morning. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The elevator hummed. Past the 20th floor. Ms. Thornton, can I tell you about my daughter? Elena nodded. Jasmine's in her second year at Johns Hopkins Medical School, Marcus said, and his voice carried this quiet pride that made Elena's chest tight. Pediatric oncology track. She wants to treat children with cancer because she watched her grandmother fight it. The elevator passed the 25th floor. 3 months ago, Jasmine called me crying. Marcus continued, his jaw tightening. Said she might have to transfer to community college because of the cost. I told her not to worry, that her father would figure it out. Elena felt her throat close. She doesn't know I've been driving instead of consulting, Marcus said softly. She thinks I'm taking a sabbatical to write a book. He smiled sadly. Every month I transfer money to her account and tell her it's from my research grant. Marcus, yesterday morning, when you said what you said in the car, I drove straight to a job interview. Marcus looked directly at her. Third one this week. Marketing coordinator at a community college. $28,000 a year. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I was going to take it, Marcus said quietly. Tell Jasmine to transfer, except that my career was over at 52. He straightened his shoulders. But then, you needed help. The elevator slowed as it approached the executive floor. Marcus, when this is over, when we save the company, I want you to call your daughter, Elena said firmly. Tell her she's going to be the best pediatric oncologist in the country, and that her father made it possible. Marcus's eyes were bright. And I want you to know, Elena continued, that saving my company isn't just about the jobs or the money. What's it about? Marcus asked. Proving that talent exists everywhere, Elena said. That worth isn't determined by job titles. That people like your daughter, and mine, grow up in a world where they're seen for who they really are. The elevator doors opened to reveal the conference room where their futures waited. Elena extended her hand. Partners. Marcus shook it firmly. Partners. They walked toward the biggest meeting of their lives, no longer boss and employee, but two people fighting for the same dream. The Tanaka-Chen Holdings delegation filled Thornton Industries' largest conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Chicago. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. But all eyes focused on the polished mahogany table, where $1.2 billion hung in the balance. Mr. Hiroshi Tanaka, 73 years old, sat with the quiet dignity of old Japanese business aristocracy. Silver hair, impeccable posture, eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Priya Chen, sharp-eyed and direct, checked her tablet with military precision. She was younger, maybe 50, but carried herself like someone who'd fought for every inch of success. Mr. Lee Carter, Chief Technology Officer, studied technical documents with laser focus. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Elena entered with Marcus at her side. The room fell silent. Marcus approached Mr. Tanaka first. He bowed with perfect depth and duration, not too shallow, not too deep. Then he spoke in formal Japanese, his voice carrying respectful authority. Tanaka's eyes widened with surprise and genuine pleasure. He responded warmly in Japanese, gesturing for everyone to be seated. What did you tell him? Elena whispered as they took their seats. That Thornton Industries is honored by his presence, Marcus replied quietly, and grateful for the wisdom of his family's business legacy. The first hour proceeded smoothly. Marcus seamlessly translated technical specifications between 3 languages. He managed cultural nuances that could derail everything. When Tanaka spoke, Marcus captured not just his words, but his meaning, the respect, the history, the weight of generations. It was like watching a master at work. Then the crisis hit. Ms. Chen suddenly stopped mid-sentence, her face darkening. She spoke rapidly in Hindi to her assistant, a young woman who immediately pulled out her phone and started typing frantically. Chen turned to the room. "I'm sorry, but we've discovered a serious problem." Elena's blood ran cold. "Our Mumbai office just informed me that Thornton's IP protection protocols are insufficient for our standards." Chen's voice was ice. "We cannot proceed with a company that has such loose security measures." The room went dead silent. Elena felt the deal slipping away, felt 200 jobs evaporating, felt her entire company dying right there in that conference room. Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Miss Chen, may I ask what specific security concerns your Mumbai office identified?" Chen's assistant whispered urgently in her ear. She nodded curtly. "Unauthorized access to algorithmic frameworks. Potential competitor infiltration." Chen closed her folder with finality. "This is exactly why our last partnership failed. We cannot—" "Miss Chen," Marcus interrupted gently but firmly, "I believe there may be a misunderstanding." He switched to Hindi, spoke directly to Chen's assistant. The young woman's eyes widened. She responded rapidly in Hindi, her tone urgent and surprised. Marcus nodded, asked several questions, then addressed the room in English. "The security breach Ms. Chen referenced was resolved yesterday evening," he said calmly. "Thornton's Mumbai team detected the intrusion attempt and implemented immediate countermeasures." He looked directly at Chen. "I personally coordinated the response with your regional director, Kumar Patel. The attempted breach was unsuccessful. And we've identified the competitor responsible." Chen stared at him. "You coordinated this?" "Thornton Industries' security protocols are actually more robust than your team realized," Marcus continued. "The fact that we detected and stopped the intrusion within hours demonstrates the strength of our systems." He pulled out his phone, scrolling to a message thread. "With your permission, I can conference Kumarji to confirm the resolution." Chen looked absolutely stunned. "You speak Hindi?" "Fluently, along with 8 other languages." Marcus's tone remained professional. "Shall I make the call?" Chen nodded slowly. The conference call with Mumbai lasted 20 minutes. Marcus mediated in 3 languages, Hindi, English, and occasionally Mandarin when technical terms needed clarification. He walked everyone through the security response timeline with the precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Kumar confirmed that Thornton's protective measures had actually exceeded Chen Holdings' own standards. When the call ended, Chen looked at Marcus with new respect, raw admiration mixed with something like AW. "Mr. Reid, your response time was impressive." "Ms. Chen, Thornton Industries takes partnership security very seriously," Marcus replied smoothly, "especially with organizations we hope to build generational relationships with." He had used the exact phrase that resonated with Chen's family business philosophy. Elena watched Chen's expression soften, but Mr. Tanaka raised another concern. He spoke quietly in Japanese, his tone grave, serious, the kind of serious that could kill deals. Marcus listened intently, his face thoughtful. Then he translated for the room. "Mr. Tanaka expresses concern about long-term cultural compatibility. He's asking whether Thornton truly understands the commitment required for a 50-year partnership." Elena felt her heart sink. This was the deeper cultural issue Marcus had warned her about, the one that couldn't be solved with contracts or money. Marcus responded in formal Japanese. He spoke for several minutes, occasionally pausing to let his words settle, to let them carry the weight they needed. Tanaka's expression gradually softened. He asked a question in Japanese, his voice less grave now, almost curious. Marcus smiled and responded with a story that made Tanaka laugh, a soft, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. "What just happened?" Elena whispered urgently. "I told him about my father's service in post-war reconstruction," Marcus explained quietly, "how American and Japanese engineers worked together to rebuild both countries." He paused. I shared that true partnerships honor the sacrifices of previous generations while building for future ones. Tanaka nodded and spoke again in Japanese, his voice warm now, approving. He says his father would have respected that sentiment, Marcus translated, and that Thornton Industries clearly understands the meaning of honor. But the biggest test was yet to come. Mr. Carter suddenly looked up from his technical documents, his face troubled. He spoke rapidly in Mandarin, pointing to specific clauses in the contract, his voice rising with concern. "What's wrong?" Elena asked, feeling panic creep back in. Marcus listened to Carter's concerns, his expression growing serious. "Mr. Carter has identified a potential patent conflict in the AI algorithms, something our legal teams missed." Elena felt the room temperature drop. Patent disputes could kill the merger instantly, could expose both companies to massive litigation, could destroy everything. "He's saying the image recognition protocols overlap with existing Chinese patents held by Baidu," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the crisis. "If true, it could expose both companies to massive litigation." Carter pulled up technical diagrams on his tablet, speaking urgently in Mandarin, pointing to code, to frameworks, to structural similarities that looked damning. Marcus studied the information, asking detailed questions in Mandarin. His technical knowledge surprised everyone in the room. This wasn't just linguistic translation. This was genuine understanding. "Mr. Carter, may I suggest a solution?" Marcus finally said. Carter nodded, still looking worried. "The protocols you're concerned about are actually an evolution of open-source frameworks that predate the Baidu patents," Marcus explained, switching to Mandarin for Carter's benefit, then back to English for the room. He pulled out his own tablet, showing comparative code structures that proved his point. "Sterling's algorithms use a completely different neural network architecture. The similarity is superficial, not structural." Carter studied the information intently. His frown gradually eased, then he smiled broadly. He spoke in Mandarin, bowing slightly to Marcus. The relief in his voice was palpable. "Mr. Carter says I understand the technology better than most programmers," Marcus translated with a slight smile, "and that he's satisfied with our IP protection." The room collectively exhaled. 3 hours later, the impossible had become reality. Thornton Industries and Tanaka-Chen Holdings hereby agree to a 50-50 partnership valued at $1.2 billion, Mr. Tanaka announced, his voice carrying the weight of history. "Implementation begins immediately." The conference room erupted in quiet celebration. Handshakes, bows, relieved smiles filling the space where tension had reigned for hours. But then something unprecedented happened. Mr. Tanaka stood slowly, commanding attention through presence alone. He addressed the room in careful English, his accent precise. "Before we proceed with celebrations, I must acknowledge someone who made this partnership possible." Every eye turned to follow his gaze, toward Marcus. "This merger succeeded not because of favorable terms or financial projections," Tanaka continued, "but because of Mr. Reid's exceptional diplomatic skill." The room fell completely silent. In 40 years of international business across 23 countries, I have never encountered such cultural intelligence combined with technical expertise. Tanaka bowed formally to Marcus, the gesture carrying profound meaning. In Japanese culture, this wasn't just respect, this was honor. "You honor both our traditions and your own profession." Marcus stood and returned the bow with perfect depth and duration, his face reflecting quiet dignity. Ms. Chen rose next, her usual directness softened by genuine admiration. "Mr. Reid, we've engaged interpretation services across 6 continents." She approached him with her business card, presenting it with both hands. "You are the finest cultural liaison we have ever encountered. We would be deeply honored if you would consider consulting for our Mumbai operations." Marcus accepted the card with appropriate ceremony. "The honor would be mine, Ms. Chen." Mr. Carter joined them, speaking in rapid Mandarin with obvious excitement. Marcus responded fluently, making Carter laugh and clap his hands together. "What did he say?" Elena asked, mesmerized by the exchange. "He offered me a position as their chief cultural officer for all Asian operations," Marcus translated with a slight smile. "I told him I already have the perfect job." The room filled with warm laughter, the tension of hours melting away like ice in summer. But the most meaningful moment was yet to come. The deal is saved. But the real question is, what happens next? Will Elena truly change? And what will Marcus do with this second chance? Comment below if you think this story proves that talent can come from anywhere, or if you've ever been overlooked because of how you looked or where you worked. Mr. Tanaka approached Marcus carrying a small silk-wrapped package. His movements were ceremonial, reverent, like he was carrying something sacred. The entire room watched in silence as Tanaka stopped in front of Marcus and spoke in Japanese, his voice thick with emotion. Marcus's expression shifted. Elena saw something flash across his face, surprise, gratitude, something deeper she couldn't quite name. Tanaka held out the package with both hands. Marcus received it the same way, unwrapping it with careful attention to the silk cloth itself, not rushing, honoring the moment. Inside lay an antique business card case. It was clearly old, the kind of old that speaks to generations. Beautiful, worn smooth by decades of use. "This belonged to my father, who rebuilt our company after the war," Tanaka said quietly in English, his voice carrying weight that made everyone lean forward. "He believed that respect transcends nationality, language, and circumstance." Tanaka's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "He would have wanted you to have this." Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he held the precious gift. He bowed deeply, holding the case against his heart in the traditional gesture of profound gratitude. "Tanaka-san, I am profoundly honored by this trust," Marcus said in Japanese, his own voice thick. The entire room watched this exchange in respectful silence, everyone understanding they were witnessing something rare, something beautiful, something that transcended business entirely. Elena felt tears threatening. In 30 years of corporate leadership, she had never seen such genuine respect between professionals from different worlds. "Mr. Reid," Ms. Chen interjected softly, "we have one additional request, if you'll permit us." Marcus looked at her expectantly, still holding Tanaka's father's card case like it was made of glass. "Our annual Global Partners Conference convenes next month in Singapore," Chen said. 500 executives from 37 countries. She paused meaningfully. "Would you consider being our keynote speaker?" The invitation hung in the air like a precious offering. Marcus glanced at Elena. "With Thornton Industries' permission, naturally," Chen added quickly, showing proper deference to his employer. Elena smiled broadly. "Mr. Reid makes his own decisions about speaking engagements. He's an executive now, not an employee." Marcus accepted graciously, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "I would be honored." As the delegation prepared to depart, each executive made personal contact with Marcus. Not just business cards, but private phone numbers, personal email addresses, direct access to some of the most powerful business leaders in Asia. "Mr. Reid," Tanaka said as they shook hands in farewell, "you have my personal number now. Please use it whenever you need anything at all." When the elevators finally closed on the departing delegation, the Thornton Industries boardroom buzzed with electric energy. David Harrison approached Marcus first, his earlier skepticism completely transformed into something like worship. "Marcus, I owe you far more than an apology," Harrison said, his voice humble in a way Elena had never heard before. "I owe you my gratitude, my respect, and frankly, my job." He paused. Without you, we'd all be updating our resumes tonight. One by one, the executives who had questioned Marcus's qualifications 24 hours earlier offered their personal admiration and professional respect. Patricia Morgan shook his hand warmly. I've been in international business for 15 years. I've never seen anything like what you did in there. Susan Walsh, who had worried about appearances, was nearly in tears. Marcus, I'm ashamed of what I said yesterday. You showed me what real professionalism looks like. But Elena had saved the biggest surprise for last. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, calling for attention. The room quieted immediately. Before we open the champagne, I have one final announcement. She produced an official document from her briefcase, her hands steady despite the emotion in her voice. Effective immediately, Marcus Reid is promoted to Executive Vice President of Global Relations. Annual salary, $280,000 plus comprehensive equity package. Marcus's breath caught audibly. Additionally, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger, Mr. Reid will oversee our new International Cultural Intelligence Division with an annual budget of $8 million and authorization to hire a team of 20 specialists worldwide. The room erupted in sustained applause. But most importantly, Elena said, her voice growing thick with emotion, Mr. Reid will serve as my personal advisor on all matters involving human dignity, corporate culture, and the recognition of talent wherever it exists. She handed Marcus a leather portfolio. Your equity package makes you the third largest individual shareholder in Thornton Industries. You're not just an employee anymore, Marcus. You're an owner of this company. Marcus opened the portfolio with trembling hands, stared at documents that represented more financial security than he'd ever imagined. More than just security. Generational wealth. Ms. Thornton, I don't know what to say, he managed, his voice cracking. Say you'll help me build a company that sees people the way you helped me see you, Elena replied. Say you'll help me become the leader I should have been all along. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The celebration continued for 2 hours. Champagne flowed. Phone calls were made to spouses and children. Plans were drawn for Marcus's new division, but the most meaningful moment came when Marcus stepped into Elena's private office to make a personal call. Elena watched through the glass wall as Marcus dialed his daughter. She could see his face transform, the weight of 3 years lifting off his shoulders all at once. Jasmine, it's Dad. Sweetheart, are you sitting down? She watched him cry and laugh simultaneously as he spoke. No, honey. You absolutely don't need to transfer schools. In fact, your father just became an executive vice president. His voice broke. Your medical school is fully funded. All 4 years. Focus on becoming the incredible doctor I know you'll be. When Marcus returned to the celebration, his eyes were bright with pure joy. How does it feel? Elena asked quietly, handing him a glass of champagne. Marcus looked around the room at his new colleagues, then at the city lights beginning to twinkle outside the windows as evening fell. Like I remember who I really am, he said softly. Like I'm finally home. 6 months later, Marcus's corner office on the 32nd floor hummed with international activity. 3 monitors displayed live feeds from Singapore, Mumbai, and Berlin. His Cultural Intelligence Division had prevented 4 major diplomatic disasters and closed deals worth $400 million. The office itself was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany desk, leather chairs, but what Marcus treasured most sat on that desk, his old driver's license in a simple frame next to Mr. Tanaka's antique business card case, a reminder of where he'd been and where he'd never go back. Elena often stopped by just to watch him work. The transformation still amazed her. Mr. Reid, his assistant announced through the intercom, your daughter's calling. Marcus smiled, that genuine, warm smile that Elena had never seen during his 3 years as her driver, and picked up. Hey, sweetheart. How's pediatric rotation treating you? Jasmine's excited voice filled the room through the speakerphone. Dad, I just got accepted for the summer research program at Children's Hospital. Full scholarship. That's my girl, Marcus said proudly. Your grandmother would be so proud. After hanging up, Marcus noticed Elena in his doorway. Good news? She asked. The best. Jasmine's becoming everything I hoped she would. Marcus gestured to his desk, to his office, to the life he'd rebuilt. Just like this company. Elena stepped inside. Any regrets about that morning in the car? Marcus considered seriously. Not anymore. That moment brought us both to where we needed to be. Even after everything I said? Elena's voice was quiet. The shame still there, even after 6 months. Elena, Marcus said. He'd started using her first name 3 months ago at her insistence. You gave me the greatest gift that day. The chance to prove that worth isn't measured by uniforms or titles. Elena's phone buzzed. She smiled at the text. Speaking of talent, she said, I just hired our new head of facilities, Maria Rodriguez. She mentioned having a law degree during her interview. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Formerly my driver, Elena grinned. Now our top legal officer. Funny how much you see when you actually look. That afternoon, a news alert flashed across Marcus's screen. Thornton Industries model transforms corporate culture nationwide. The article featured dozens of companies adopting their hidden talent initiative, CEOs sharing stories of discovering PhDs working in mailrooms, former professors driving Ubers, displaced engineers cleaning offices, stories of people who'd been invisible suddenly being seen. Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Reid, this is David Park from Samsung Electronics. The voice was urgent. We need your help. What can I do for you, Mr. Park? Our night janitor just solved a coding problem our engineers couldn't crack for 6 months. Park's voice was amazed, bewildered. Turns out he's a former AI researcher from Seoul National University. We heard about your story. How do we do this right? Marcus smiled. Start by apologizing, then start by listening. By evening, Marcus had fielded 12 similar calls. Companies worldwide trying to figure out how to see the talent they'd been stepping over. Elena found him at 8 p.m., still taking calls from executives around the globe. The Marcus Reid Foundation is getting 500 applications daily, she reported, sitting down across from him. Displaced professionals, underemployed talent, people stuck in survival jobs. How many can we help with our corporate partners? Marcus asked, making notes. Maybe 2,000 this year. Marcus nodded, but his expression was thoughtful, troubled. Elena, I want to tell you something. She recognized his serious tone and gave him her full attention. This morning, I got a call from a mother in Detroit. Marcus's voice grew heavy. Her son Devin is an MIT graduate working at McDonald's because no one will hire him. 3 years of applications, 0 interviews. Elena felt her heart clench. She was crying. Marcus continued, his voice thick. She said she saw our story and wondered if there was hope for her boy. He looked directly at Elena. That call reminded me why this matters. What did you tell her? I told her to send me his resume. Marcus's eyes were bright. Devin starts in our Berlin office next month. Elena smiled through tears. 1 person at a time. 1 person at a time, Marcus agreed. 3 months later, Elena stood backstage at a major tech conference in San Francisco. 5,000 attendees. Marcus was about to give the keynote address, his first major public speech since his promotion. You nervous? Elena asked him. Marcus adjusted his tie, the same conservative blue tie he'd worn to that first merger meeting, his lucky tie now. Terrified, he admitted with a smile. but ready. You've negotiated with world leaders, Elena reminded him. World leaders don't have Twitter, Marcus replied, and they both laughed. The stage manager gave the signal. Marcus took a deep breath. Elena watched from the wings as he walked onto that massive stage. The applause was thunderous. Good evening, Marcus began, his voice filling the auditorium. My name is Marcus Reid, and 3 years ago I was driving a Mercedes for minimum wage while holding a PhD from Georgetown. The audience went silent. I want to tell you a story about invisibility, Marcus continued, about what happens when we decide someone's worth based on their job title instead of their humanity. For 45 minutes, Marcus held that audience captive. He told his story with raw honesty, the budget cuts, the desperate job search, the 3 years of invisible service. But he also told Elena's story, her courage in admitting she was wrong, her commitment to transformation. The person who changed my life wasn't a HR director or a talent scout, Marcus said. It was a CEO who was desperate enough to finally see me, and brave enough to change. He paused, letting that sink in. Right now, someone is serving your coffee who speaks 4 languages. Someone is cleaning your office who has an engineering degree. Someone is driving your Uber who used to run international negotiations. His voice carried authority now, the kind that made people lean forward. Tomorrow morning, when you interact with service workers, ask yourself, what talents am I not seeing? What potential am I dismissing? What story am I missing? Marcus stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Here's what I want you to do. Find one person this week whose job title doesn't match their potential. Really talk to them. Ask about their background, their dreams, their skills. He paused. Then do something about it. Make an introduction, write a recommendation, share their story. Small actions create big changes. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave, people rising to their feet. The ovation lasted 3 full minutes. Backstage, Elena was crying. Proud tears this time, not shame. 1 year after that morning in the Mercedes, Elena stood in front of the Thornton Industries building, watching workers stream out at the end of the day. She recognized Maria Rodriguez, formerly her driver, now chief legal officer, saw Ahmed Hassan, formerly facilities, now head of international compliance with his PhD in international law, finally useful. Marcus's Cultural Intelligence Division had grown to 50 employees. 23 of them were formerly invisible workers who'd been discovered through the Hidden Talent Initiative. The company's revenue had doubled. But more importantly, the culture had transformed completely. Marcus walked out of the building and joined her on the sidewalk. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "I was just thinking about that morning in the car," Elena replied. "The person I was. The person you had to be to get here," Marcus corrected gently. "We both had to break before we could build something better." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you forgive me? For what I said, for how I treated you?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "Elena, forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about using it to build a better future." He gestured to the building behind them. "Look at what we've created because of that morning. Not in spite of it. Because of it." Elena nodded, finally feeling the weight lift. "Besides," Marcus added with a grin, "you gave me my life back. Hard to stay mad at someone who did that." 2 years later. The Marcus Reid Foundation had helped 5,000 displaced professionals return to their fields. The Hidden Talent Initiative had been adopted by 300 companies worldwide. Marcus's daughter Jasmine graduated top of her class from Johns Hopkins. She was starting her residency in pediatric oncology at Children's Hospital. Elena had written a book, Seeing the Invisible: How to Find Extraordinary Talent in Ordinary Places. It became a New York Times bestseller. Thornton Industries was now worth $3 billion. But the moment that mattered most came on a random Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in his office when his assistant buzzed. "There's someone here to see you, says it's personal." A young black man walked in. Maybe 25, nervous, wearing a McDonald's uniform. "Mr. Reid, my name is Devin Thompson. You helped my mother a couple years ago." Marcus remembered immediately. The call from Detroit. "Devin, how are you?" "I'm the senior technology officer for our Berlin division now," Devin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Because of you. Because you saw me." He held out an envelope. "I just wanted to give you this. In person." Marcus opened it. Inside was a check for $10,000 made out to the Marcus Reid Foundation. "It's my first big bonus," Devin explained. "I want to help someone else the way you helped me." Marcus stood and shook Devin's hand, then pulled him into a hug. "You don't owe me anything," Marcus said. "I owe you everything," Devin replied. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure people like us don't stay invisible." After Devin left, Marcus sat at his desk for a long time, staring at that check, thinking about the ripples. One conversation with Elena had changed his life. His life change had changed Devin's life. Devin's change would change someone else's. On and on and on. That was the real transformation. 5 years after that morning in the Mercedes, Marcus was giving a TED Talk. The most watched TED Talk of the year, actually. 30 million views and counting. The title, "You're Stepping Over Genius Every Day." Elena sat in the front row, watching him command that stage, watching him change minds, change hearts, change the world. When he finished, the standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Backstage, a young woman approached Marcus. She was wearing a custodial uniform. Her name tag read, Sarah. "Mr. Reid," she said nervously, "I just wanted to say thank you. Your story gave me the courage to tell my boss about my master's degree in environmental science." "What did they say?" Marcus asked gently. "They promoted me to head of sustainability." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "After 2 years of emptying trash cans, someone finally asked about my background." Marcus hugged her. "Keep telling your story, Sarah. Someone needs to hear it." 10 years after that morning in the Mercedes, Marcus Reid was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people. The Marcus Reid Foundation had helped 50,000 professionals worldwide. The Hidden Talent Initiative was taught in business schools as a case study in corporate transformation. But Marcus's favorite moment came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. He was having dinner with Elena and their families. It had become a monthly tradition. Jasmine was there with her wife and their newborn daughter. Elena's son had just graduated college. "Uncle Marcus," Elena's son asked, "do you ever think about what would have happened if Mom hadn't needed help that day?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think about it all the time," he admitted. "But here's what I've learned. We don't get to choose our breaking points. We only get to choose what we build after we break." He looked around the table at the people who'd become his family. "That morning in the car, I thought my life was over. Turned out it was just beginning." Elena raised her glass. "To beginnings. To second chances," Marcus added. They all drank. 15 years later, Marcus Reid retired from Thornton Industries at 67. His farewell party filled an entire ballroom. 500 people whose lives he'd changed, CEOs and custodians, executives and drivers, all there because Marcus had seen them. Elena gave the final speech. 15 years ago, I said the worst thing I've ever said to another human being," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion. "I was cruel. I was blind. I was wrong." The room was silent. But Marcus gave me a gift that day. He gave me the chance to change, to become better, to build something that matters. She looked directly at Marcus. You didn't just save my company. You saved my soul. Marcus stood and hugged her. The room erupted in applause. Marcus Reid is 72 now. He spends his time mentoring young professionals, speaking at conferences, writing books about dignity and recognition and the power of seeing people. The Marcus Reid Foundation has helped over 100,000 people worldwide find careers that match their talents. Every year, on the anniversary of that morning in the Mercedes, Marcus and Elena meet for coffee. They sit and remember. They laugh about how far they've come. Do you ever regret it? Elena asks every year. The 3 years you lost? And every year, Marcus gives the same answer. I didn't lose 3 years. I invested them, and the return has been extraordinary. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is serving coffee who speaks 6 languages. Someone is driving an Uber who used to design bridges. Someone is stocking shelves who holds a PhD in molecular biology. They're invisible, just like Marcus was. But they don't have to stay invisible. All it takes is one person who decides to look, to ask, to see. Maybe that person is you. Maybe today is the day you discover that the person cleaning your office used to teach at MIT, that your Lyft driver is a former diplomat, that the barista making your latte graduated summa cum laude from Stanford. Maybe today is the day you change someone's life by simply paying attention. Because here's the truth that Marcus Reid proved. Talent doesn't wear designer suits. Brilliance doesn't need corner offices. Genius doesn't always have the right job title. But it's everywhere, waiting, hoping, praying for someone to finally see it. Be that someone. Ask questions, share stories, make connections. One conversation can change everything. Marcus Reid's life changed because Elena Thornton finally opened her eyes. Whose life will change because you opened yours? This story is inspired by the countless talented people working jobs that don't match their potential. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below if you've ever been overlooked or if you've discovered hidden talent in an unexpected place. And remember, the next genius you meet might be wearing a uniform. Will you see them? Subscribe for more stories that challenge how we see the world and the people in it. Hit that like button if you believe everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are. What would you do if you discovered your driver had a PhD? Drop your honest answer below.